The Monday, October 16th, 2023 City of Vandalia Council meeting is now called to order. We'll start with a moment of reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Council, you have the council budget workshop minutes of September 18th, along with the study session minutes of September 18th, the council meeting minutes of September 18th, and the council budget workshop minutes of September 27th. Are there any comments or corrections? Being none, they stand approved. And that brings us to communications, petitions, and awards. And Mr. Wendt has a introduction.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. I would invite firefighter paramedic inspector Mr. Ricky Davis II to just go ahead and stand up. Today we'll be conducting his ceremonial swear-in. He is joined by his wife Tiffany and also his son Bentley, who's supporting that Vandalia lapel pin. Mr. Davis started work last week in a full-time capacity. He's been with us since about March 2022 as a firefighter EMT. He's got his basic certification and he's heading to medic school pretty quickly here. Oh, you're in medic school now. My apologies. He's done some work at the Mad River Township Fire and EMS, and then also Miami Township Fire Rescue of Yellow Springs, as well as having various other experiences. He and his family reside in Fairborn. Without further ado, I'll ask Mr. Davis and Mrs. Davis and their son Bentley to go ahead and join me over here. And my wife has been saying that when we do swear-ins that I need a handheld microphone so that she can hear them at home. And so we're going to do that today. I'll just go ahead and I'll ask you to raise your right hand. I, Ricky Davis II, solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and will obey the laws of the United States and of the state of Ohio, that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the Charter and ordinances of the City of Vandalia, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of firefighter paramedic inspector within the Division of Fire. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Don't worry, you'll have it figured out for when he promotes. Ladies and gentlemen, firefighter paramedic inspector Ricky Davis II. All right, we're going to do some really fun stuff at this meeting, so if you're just here for the swear-in, none of us will be offended if you take off Fire Division. But you can stay, too. Captain Garver says no. Well,
All right.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to amend this evening's agenda to remove ordinance 2322 from the table for consideration in its second reading as an emergency this evening.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Follick and a second by Councilman Blakesley to remove ordinance 23-22 from this evening's agenda. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
I just have a question. That is an emergency ordinance, so is it the intent to pass it as an emergency still? Which is fine. I just need to know. That's how it was presented for staff. Okay. Sorry. Councilmember Ehlers? Yeah. Councilmember Woods?
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley?
Yes.
Councilmember Follick?
Yes.
Councilmember Fares?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Herbst?
Yes, the motion passes 7-0. We have no public hearing, and that brings us to comments from interested citizens. So if anyone would like to make a comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and your comment.
Good evening. My name is Hari Varma. Live at 1082 Mystic Lane in Vandalia. My wife and I have been residents for the last 5 years. I have a little, don't know what issue and maybe a recommendation. So we moved in August of 2018. As we were moving in across the street, we had a ton of leaves. I have pictures of it for this year. So we went and talked to the lady, and she said there is really no ordinance in Vandalia as to when you can put out leaves or when you cannot. The last 5 years, now and then we would call the city and see if they can do anything, but most of the time they don't have an answer. So this year, it typically starts about end of July. And so August, September, October, until the leaves are picked up. The street looks in real bad shape for that part of Mystic Lane. And the neighbors, besides us, they all had issues with it, but nobody really took time to address it. So we called Tip City. They have an ordinance. You can't put the leaves out until 2 weeks prior to pickup. Same thing with Troy. Harrison Township, Butler Township, City of Dayton, they don't have ordinances, but they have, if you complain, somebody will go and talk to them and see what they can do. So we were just wondering if this is something, this is pretty much how our street would look like for 2-3 months a year. Is this something that we can, I talked to the city planner, and he said this year they're trying to do some changes to, zoning or some sort of issues that you have, So we were just wondering if this is something that we can get on the books. So, we want to have a good community, good neighbors and a peaceful living, and obviously make the neighborhood look nice, So that's the main thing. So that is what I was going to talk about.
So she has leaves down in the street before
Oh,
they come off the tree? She got a very
I think
tree.
she has some sort of tree in the back that sheds, earlier than usual, but
Okay.
if you drive by Mystic Lane or, Castle Hills, you will not find anybody putting any leaves out till maybe this week, I even told them that, hey, I'll help you bag it if you want. But she said, no, this is what I'm gonna do, so, so end of July, beginning of August, leaves are on. So, summertime, it's really hard to keep the neighborhood clean, cut the grass. So it's been a problem, but, we all work every day. This is not something that, we think about all the time, but 8 o'clock, you want to cut the grass, you have maybe 20 minutes of cleaning the leaves. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention, and I'd like to see if our city manager could comment on that and look into it.
sure. Is it Mr. Varma?
Yes.
And how do I spell that correctly?
V as in Victor, A-R, M as in Mary, A as in Adam.
Okay, that's how I wrote it down.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The property in question, your address is 1082 Mystic
Correct.
Lane.
Correct.
The neighbor's address, do you know that?
1087.
1087. Okay. Sir, what I would request, Assistant City Manager Amber Holloway is seated behind you.
Okay,
I would just request that you give your phone number
okay.
to her and the images, if that's okay, if we
Yeah,
can have
perfect, yeah.
those. And what we'll do is we'll look into that and we'll
Okay.
follow up with you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you,
thank you.
Mr. Varma.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment? All right, we'll move on to our city manager's report. Mr. Wendt.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. First off, I'd like to congratulate staff, the Arts Council, all of our partners who were involved in the Fall Fest on Saturday, October 14th, which started at noon. The weather did not cooperate as much, but there was a lot of fun to be had and great live music. Of course, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Minster Bank, Vintage Signs, and the Day Air Credit Union. Also on display there was the Block Party trailer, and so I hope that you all had a chance to see that. We'll have it on display probably at the next council meeting. And so I congratulate Assistant City Manager Amber Holloway, our Parks and Rec team, and everyone who helped to get that off the ground. I remember when we were at the City Managers Conference in Columbus, and Amber brought that idea up, and so I'm very excited to have that come to fruition, and I know that's going to be really popular. So that's able to be rented for free. It has tables, games, everything in it.
Yes, an emergency, right? It's an emergency now.
The sports complex,
But Jerry said otherwise we have to do it again.
the sports complex playground ribbon cutting will take place with a play-in event on October 21st at 10 a.m. And on the 25th of October, we'll have an employee appreciation event at the Justice Center. You, of course, are invited. We'll have donuts there from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Leaf collection, of course, started last week. That leaf collection program ends officially on December 5th. We have a lot of information, but on the website, leaves must be raked into the street. Leaves and grass behind the curb will not be picked up in areas without curbs. Leaves must be placed immediately along the edge of the pavement, and crews will not get piles of leaves more than a foot away from the roadway. That's due to our equipment. We have a lot of information on the website, including the schedule at vandaliaohio.org/leaf. Beggars Night will be October 31st, 6 to 8 p.m. I'd like to call out and congratulate Public Works Technician Bill Miles. We got a great correspondence from Miss Mary Burnett, who called to the city to compliment Mr. Miles. He installed a water meter in her house. So we're swapping those out in a lot of homes, and this one was particularly hard to access, and she complimented him for his good customer service. I'd like to take a moment just to recognize Public Service Director Rob Cron. Persistence really does pay off in public service, and so there have been a couple of times where Director Cron has applied through the Ohio Department of Transportation for funding for the Municipal Bridge Program. This is the South Castle Road Bridge, think Johnson Station, where it serves Unibuilt. Last week, Director Cron received notification that the city will be receiving up to $1,313,211 in federal funds. That is a city bridge, and so we very much could have been stuck self-funding that all on our own, and so we've been resisting that, and that's just a huge win and a huge windfall for us. And so I'd like to congratulate him for that. The last thing that I'll say is I'm thankful to the Vandalia Butler Chamber of Commerce. I got notified recently that they recognized me as the community's business professional of the year. I'm humbled by this recognition, thankful for the opportunity to lead a great team of public servants at the city of Vandalia. It's great to be city manager in the community where I live and to have strong support from the public and the business community. And so I would just say I look forward to continuing to do great things in building on our long tradition of making Vandalia a great place to live, work, and play, and also make businesses more successful. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no old business tonight, and that brings us to our first resolution of this evening, that being Resolution 23-R-65. Mr. McDonald, by title only.
A resolution establishing a summer meeting schedule for the months of June, July, and August 2024.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
This resolution proposes that during the months of June, July, and August, City Council will meet once per month on the third Monday of each month. Study sessions will be scheduled to begin at 5:30 p.m., with the regular business meeting starting at 7 p.m. The official dates for 2024 would be June 17th, July 15th, and August 19th.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve Resolution 23R65.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Blakesley and a second by Councilwoman Farsh to approve Resolution 23-R-65 as presented. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Woods?
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley?
Yes.
Councilmember Follak?
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Herbst?
Yes, the motion passes 7-0. Next, we have Resolution 23-R-66.
A resolution awarding the bid for the 2023 sanitary sewer slip lining project requested by the Public Works Department to Insight Pipe Contracting at the lowest and best bid price of $97,982.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
Your Honor, bids were opened publicly for the sanitary sewer slip lining project on Tuesday, September 26, 2023. We've enclosed a bid tabulation sheet for references. 5 sets of specifications were issued and 3 contractors submitted bids for the project. Those bids ranged from $97,982 to $125,454. Our estimate for the project was $100,000. We've been awarded $50,000 in community development block grant funding for this project, and we have funds appropriated in the sanitary sewer portion of the 2023 capital improvement budget for this project. Director Cron recommends awarding the contract for this project to Insight Pipe Contracting as the lowest and best bid for their bid price of $97,982.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Your Honor, I'll move to approve Resolution 23R66 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Follak and a second by Councilwoman Farsh to approve Resolution 23-R-66 as presented. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Blakesley?
Yes.
Councilmember Follak?
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Councilmember Woods?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Herbst?
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we have Resolution 23-R-67.
Resolution accepting the tax year 2023-2024 amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
This resolution will accept the amounts and rates for tax year 2022. The Montgomery County Auditor noted the amounts and rates are subject to change due to election results and value changes.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 23-R-67.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Ayers and a second by Councilman Follak to approve Resolution 23-R-67 as presented. Are there any comments from council?
I just, real quick, and I meant to look it up, but I forgot. I just think it's always important to point out that it's kind of a housekeeping issue, but our property tax rates have not, the city's property tax rates have not increased since was it 89?
82.
1982. So this has been, 40 years of basically maintaining the same property tax rate that the city realizes, which is remarkable. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Call the roll.
Councilmember Follak?
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst?
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers?
Yes.
Councilmember Woods?
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Herbst?
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we have Resolution 23-R-68.
A resolution authorizing the submittal of applications for federal STP funds through the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
Your Honor, the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission is accepting applications for consideration for the Surface Transportation Program, or STP funding. This, excuse me, this year they will accept applications for resurfacing projects to be funded in fiscal years 2028 and 2029. Applications for simple resurfacing are only available every few years. Engineering would begin in 2026. The city is proposing to apply for resurfacing for Poe Avenue from Stop 8 to Image Drive, Weiss Road from 75 to Webster Street, and Miller Lane from Stop 8 Road to Benchwood Drive. As part of the application, we are required to submit a resolution supporting the project and guaranteeing our local share of funding.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve Resolution 23R68 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Farsh and a second by Councilman Blakesley to approve Resolution 23-R-68 as presented. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Fairst,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Woods,
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley,
Yes.
Councilmember Follak,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we have Resolution 23-R-69.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a settlement agreement with Prairie Flyer Energy Storage LLC.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
This resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a settlement agreement with Prairie Flyer Storage LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Jupiter Power LLC. Prairie Flyer intends to purchase a 19.3-acre parcel located in the city of Vandalia in order to construct and to operate a battery energy storage system. It has applied with the Ohio Power Sitting Board for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need with respect to the project. The city raised concerns about the project and certificate in a letter to OPSB in March and was considering formally intervening in the matter. However, after meeting with Prairie Flyer on multiple occasions, the parties have reached a settlement agreement.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 23R69.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Blakesley and a second by Councilman Ayers to approve Resolution 23-R-69 as presented. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Woods,
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley,
Yes.
Councilmember Follak,
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we'll move on to ordinances in their first reading, the first one being ordinance 23-26.
An ordinance rezoning 126.334 acres of publicly owned land and amending the zoning map of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
Thank you, Your Honor. The city-initiated rezoning involves 19 parcels totaling 126.812 plus or minus acres, located in the following locations: 810 Northwoods Boulevard, 815 Foley Drive, Webster Street, approximately 500 feet south of Park Center Boulevard, the intersection of Old Springfield and Old Canal Roads, and the southeast end of Johnson Station Road. As proposed, the subject properties would be rezoned from a combination of agriculture, residential single-family, 3, gateway business, highway business, office industrial park, industrial, all to the public facilities and office industrial park zoning districts. On September 26th, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the proposed rezoning.
Thank you. Have a motion?
Your Honor, I'll move to approve Resolution 23-26 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Follak and a second by Councilwoman Farsh to approve ordinance 23-26 in its first reading. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Woods,
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley,
Yes.
Councilmember Follak,
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 23-27.
An ordinance approving court-authorized assessments against various parcels and directing the finance director or her designee to certify the amounts to the county auditor for collection.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
The city obtained nuisance abatement orders from the court for 2 parcels at 6325 Shady Knoll Drive and 841 Spartan Avenue. The structures on the parcels were then raised by the city pursuant to court order. As the costs to raise the nuisance structures have not been paid, this ordinance is necessary for the city to assess the cost of the property owners and have the county auditor place the amounts due upon the tax list and duplicate.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance 23-27 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Ayers and a second by Councilwoman Fairst to approve Resolution 23-27 in its first reading. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Blakesley,
Yes.
Councilmember Follak,
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst,
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Woods,
yes,
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion passes 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 23-28.
An ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Vandalia, Ohio during the calendar year ending December 31, 2024, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
Your Honor, this ordinance authorizes appropriations for fiscal year 2024. The city's operating capital and revitalization budget is a policy document and a fiscal plan that we use to set out anticipated revenue and expenditures for accomplishing a variety of public services over a given time. Our budget is an expression of our priorities and the resources that we are strategically dedicating toward improving quality of life for our residents, corporate citizens, and anyone who visits Vandalia. The 4th 2024 Operating Maintenance Capital and Revitalization Budget Workshop was held at the Justice Center in the Community Room at 2 p.m. on Thursday, October 12th, 2023. I'd like to thank our senior staff members who provided additional background information involving many of the tough decisions and considerations that were before the City Council. There's no doubt that this team is committed to providing top-tier public services while developing a strong fiscal plan that helps us work towards our citywide policy goals. This budget aligns with the policy direction that's been established by the Vandalia City Council. Since 2021, City Council has celebrated our team's success in capturing approximately $15,438,656 in committed and anticipated grants, donations, and external funding to stretch taxpayer funds. I have no doubt that this is the city's most comprehensive forecast to date. I'd like to thank City Council for the many inquiries and efforts of due diligence. This has improved the way that we do business, and it should bolster the public's trust and confidence in the council's management of their resources. This year, Finance Director Leiter, Assistant Finance Director Carnes, Assistant City Manager Holloway, and I worked with our team to assemble a more comprehensive capital improvement plan to study and to predict probable revenue streams and to include potential future debt service payments for transformative projects. We have used these analyses to demonstrate feasibility and financial sustainability and to account for possible future staffing proposals that will make Vandalia an increasingly safe and secure community. Thank you to Director Leiter, who has spent many nights and weekends preparing and modifying the many iterations of this budget. I'd like to point out that I'm especially proud of the LJB Facilities Maintenance Master Plan document that Director Clark, Superintendent Wells, and Inspector Mastrino produced as we wrap up the $9 million roof and HVAC infrastructure project. This third-party document will help our team to communicate needs more effectively and to plan out how we care for the public's investment in our buildings, grounds, parking lots, and other facilities. Also, during this process, we brought in the city's financial advisor and bond counsel to work with city council and our administrative team to help us gain a richer understanding of the subtleties relating to public sector fund accounting, bond ratings, the practices of rating agencies, general obligation debt versus revenue debt, as well as to provide an evaluation and analysis of the many opportunities and options that are before the City Council. This year, our budget process began on July 1, 2023. This is when the Finance Department prepared electronic workbooks for the departments. Our team worked on departmental budgets and returned them to the Finance Department for initial review in early August. Assistant City Manager Holloway, Director Leiter, Assistant Director Carnes, and I met with each department to study budget requests and service delivery needs. We then compared those with the budgetary constraints and competing priorities. On September 11th, 2023, I met with the City Council to discuss the 2024 budget at the Fall Retreat. Our team also met for budget workshops on September 14th, 18th, 27th. We had the October 2nd study session and a fourth budget workshop on October 12th, 2023. These exercises in due diligence are worthy and necessary because they help us to grow as a cohesive team, build understanding, and demonstrate transparency to our community. This is really an exciting budget and an exciting 5-year forecast. I'd like to commend the staff and the City Council for their critical thought and desire to improve the way that we do business by addressing deferred items, working towards industry standards, and implementing modern technologies that will make us more efficient. This budget is nearly identical to the budget that was produced after workshop number 3, which was presented on October 2nd in the study session. Here are a couple of highlights that are included in the budget. $1,573,329 to purchase and to upfit 2 police cruisers in 2024 and 3 cruisers in each of the years from 2025 to 2028. $375,000 to replace a medic unit, that's an ambulance, in 2025, $400,000 to replace a medic unit in 2027, understanding that it takes 18 to 24 months in order to receive those. We've got $3,886,014 to build the Vandalia Bikeway connector from Taylorsville Metro Park to Bunkers. This includes $3,011,359 in grant and external funding in 2024 and 2025. We've got $60,000 in traffic signal preemption devices that will make our police officers, firefighters, and residents safer during emergency responses. We've got $55,000 for training equipment and props for firefighter, paramedic, inspectors. And very excitingly, $1 million in street resurfacing and $380,000 in curb, sidewalk, and concrete work with a 3% escalator in each of the next 5 years. There's $1 million for resurfacing on Webster Street. That includes a grant of $717,132, which the city has never received that grant before. There's $1,764,000, including an offset of a $900,000 grant to replace water mains and to resurface Tyonda Drive, Mossview, and Ranchview. $150,000 in asphalt maintenance for the walking paths at Sports Complex. $500,000 in new water meters to replace the obsolete and failing ones. $650,020 to construct an inclusive playground for children of all abilities in Robinette Park in 2024. This includes $113,856 that's coming from the city's capital improvement funds, while the rest will be external funds. A placeholder for $570,000 to build a splash pad, to maintain asphalt, and to make other improvements to Robinette Park in 2025, with $275,000 coming from the city's capital improvement funds. The addition of 1 full-time parks maintenance technician in 2024, a placeholder for forecasted possible addition of 3 full-time firefighter paramedic inspectors in 2025, a placeholder for forecasted possible addition of 3 full-time firefighter paramedic inspectors in 2028, Placeholders for the annual debt service payments of $310,000 from utility funds for the Dogleg Road Utility Extension Project Phase 2. Placeholders for the forecasted annual debt service payments of $1.4 million from various funds for the new Public Works facility on Northwoods Boulevard, where the city secured a 16-acre donation of land valued at $900,000. Placeholders for forecasted annual debt service payments of $170,000 for the Castle Hills Golf Course Irrigation Project, $80,000 to conduct a downtown master plan that will be guided by the community members and reflect our ongoing market study, an active transportation plan to make Vandalia more walkable and bikeable in the future, and a 5-year strategy for developing and building the National Road Streetscape Road Diet. The 2024 budget is scheduled for a first reading this evening, and it will be the 7th time that the City Council has met to do due diligence on the budget. Pending passage in the first reading, the budget is scheduled for a second reading and adoption on November 6, 2023. Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
Your Honor, I'll move to approve ordinance 23-28 in the first reading.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Follick and a second by Councilman Ayers to approve ordinance 23-28 in its first reading. Any comments?
I just have one, and it was, and it's just to clarify a statement I put on social media earlier today, but in response to some information that was what I believe was misleading that was posted on social media earlier today, I felt it necessary to clarify, and that's simply that this budget proposal does not include any income tax increase to our residents. And that proposed income tax increase has never been discussed by anyone on this council in the past 4 years that I've been on council. I think our income tax revenues are exceeding projections at year over year. So we are collecting more than enough income tax revenue to provide services that our residents expect and for the capital improvement and infrastructure improvements that we are planning. And just to clarify that has not been discussed by this body in my 4 years that I'm aware of. And even if we were to engage a potential income tax increase, this council doesn't have the power to do that by legislation. That would be a ballot issue that the residents would have to pass at the ballot. So we cannot increase our income tax revenues without a vote of the residents. So I just wanted to clarify that. It was also on social media today. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple quick comments. First, we're only approving the budget for 2024. And while we've spent 15 to 20 hours studying this budget and going through the budgets to come, because we track capital spending for 5 years. And we've also tried to track the debt service or bonding that debt that the city will take on over the next 5 years. I'm going to vote for the budget today because I have not brought forth any specific reasons not to. I'm troubled by several things. One is my own inherent conservatism when it comes to spending money. We have what is called our general fund, where the income tax money comes in. Income tax is the primary source of our funding. What we have determined, and I think as a whole council, was to begin spending down our general fund because we have a very healthy balance there. And the general idea was that we would use this additional spending to provide for what is generally the general consensus is badly needed infrastructure. I think we all have agreed on that. We've generally agreed that our general fund balance would be about 50% of 6 months of expenses. And we're higher than that, so we do have a number of $1 million extra. And the other thing that we have anticipated is the safety department, fire safety, that generally, and you may have recently seen it in the Dayton Daily News, will generally, over a period of years, transition from what has been a part-time paid-on-call fire department to one that is structured basically as a permanent firefighters and fire safety specialists. We've all agreed on on these things. What I personally am troubled by is we forecasted that our income tax revenue is going to rise 6.5% in the next year, 6.5% next year, which, when I compare it to the private sector, is absolute phenomenal growth. The exception to that is, as we have grown that much really over the last 5 years, each year our income tax revenue has exceeded the year before. If we follow that out, it says, well, it should keep rising. I'm troubled with that because if I look at the private sector, I don't know any business, unless it's in the tech center, that is increasing in revenues or net profit, because it's tax money that we're taking in, by 6.5, 6.5, 6.5 repeatedly. I think that is overly aggressive. I also know that we are spending or forecasted spending based on income, and the other selling point on the budget was that we estimate expenses conservatively, so that there was a lot of safety valves built into our budget such that we won't get ahead of our expenses won't get ahead of what we budgeted. So if we budget $10 for a widget, it may come in at $9, and thus we've saved $1, only on a much bigger scale. Contra to that, if we're in a spend-down method, if we don't forecast that correctly, in an inflationary time, it could come in at $11, and then we have to come up with additional monies. The reason for this explanation is that over a 5-year period, at the end of the 5-year period, in that the spend-down method, we don't have any excess, and that's predicated on these revenues coming in at 6.5, 6.5, and I think later on we budgeted 4.5. So I think the one takeaway for the public is assuming that the council approves this budget, that is only for 2024, and at least for me, and it's difficult to track our budget. I'm backing up. It's difficult to track our budget because monies come from all over, not just this income tax. So we have, say, 15, even 20 different funds that money goes into. And money gets allocated for this and for that. It may come in from water sewer fees, and that goes into the water sewer fund. We're in something called Tri-Cities, which is a group, being Tip City and Huber Heights and Vandalia, that processes our waste. That plan has to be redone, and thus we as a council aggressively raised our water sewer rates. Why? Because the remanufacture or the remodel of this plant is estimated to be in excess of $100 million. This was not something that we as a council, or really these cities, had forecasted in years before. We had the lowest water rates. Now, even with our increases, we're about in the middle of the 40 communities from Cincinnati north up to Piqua-Sidney. So we're still, while expensive, reasonably priced, and we're ahead of that expense. with all that said, one of the issues that had concerned council throughout this process was our bonding capacity. We want to make sure that we have the ability to borrow money and maintain our high bond rating. That rating enables us to borrow money at a lesser rate. The city manager brought in bond counsel and several others that seemed to indicate that we were in good shape in terms of taking on new debt. We have debt that we're paying off, we're taking on new. But I believe also that we're at the outer edge of that and we have to take it slow. We're going to approve in the next number of months several projects, namely, if it's approved, a re-irrigation of the golf course, which is needed, or the golf course will fail because that infrastructure is failing, and completing the water line project out west of the city. So with all that said, my trepidation here is it's very difficult for us to track, and I believe it's an aggressive spend down schedule of 1.4 million. And while planned, I plan to, and I think all of us should be extremely vigilant to make sure that our revenues are high enough where we forecasted to support what we forecasted in all the numerous projects that our city manager has put forth in spending. And it's not where we need to focus in terms of spending, it's where our money's coming from and how much of it. And I thought perhaps we lost track of that a little bit. But overall, I can say, as a council, everybody worked extremely hard on this budget, harder than any that I've been associated with in the last 22 years. And I'm hopeful that I'm wrong on the income forecasts and that we will adhere to the budget, but that's a responsibility that we have, and we'll certainly undertake it. I know I went a little far afield, but there are a whole lot of working parts here that we have gone over. And those are my general feelings. I have a lot of trepidation. I will support it, but if our funding and our income is not approaching where it needs to be, then I will not vote for any spending after that point until it gets to be at least balanced related to our budget, and then we will have to be much more aggressive in the 25. Before I end, I wish to stress, though, to the public and to us that we're only approving the 24 budget. We do have, the city is very healthy in terms of its general fund balances, and we're only approving 24. We're not necessarily approving debt service, additional bonds for 25, 26. That hasn't happened yet. So if we focus on 24, I think it's a reasonable budget, and we are accomplishing our goal in terms of spending down, but it's also extremely difficult to track, and the onus is on us to do that. I'm sorry, that's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, well, thank you. I would also like to add that, I'm very conservative by nature also. Spending down the fund balance isn't the problem. The biggest concern I have is with the fixed cost and the debt service that we're going to be taking on now and in the future. While we're spending down that general fund balance, my concern is we're not going to be able to sustain it. I would much rather see us take a more conservative approach with the fixed expenses and capital expenditures. If the revenue's there, then I don't mind adding additional projects to use that money. It is the taxpayers' money, and it should be used for their services. But in this scenario, if we're not tracking the revenues the way we forecasted it, we're just going to be running an even larger budget or deficit. I would have felt much more comfortable with approving some kind of version number 3 that the city manager presented to us. It was a much more conservative approach when it comes to capital expenses. Again, my biggest concern is, once we spend down that fund balance, are we going to be able to sustain the kind of spending that we're taking on with these fixed costs and the debt service of the projects that we have coming? And I think over the next couple of years, we're like $30 million. So that's my main concern with this budget.
And I am extremely concerned, and I had we were inundated with information, there's no doubt, and there are some wonderful things in our '24 budget. I will agree. But the idea, the discussion kept coming up on, we all agreed to spend down our general fund reserve, but truly, we're going to accomplish that without any trying whatsoever. So I think we need to take that idea off the table. We have debt service. This last year, we took on $13.5 million in debt. We're looking at another $24 million, and that isn't even Tri-Cities, which could end up being $30 million. Tremendous amounts of debt. True that the Tri-Cities may not affect our bond rating, but we're still liable for that payment. I think we all agreed that we've been told for years that we can't afford a full-time fire department, and I think council is working in that direction to do that. That is an extremely large cost to us, but I think we've all decided that that's the direction we want to go. And I agree with Councilman or Mayor Herbst that we were given 3 versions. It was presented that we should originally project our revenues at 8%. Council wisely took that down to 6.5%, I think. I think we could have gone into capital budget, and though there were some great things there, we could have looked at reducing those. And if our actuals come in at the end of the year where we need them to be, keeping in mind that we supplemented almost $3 million last year, so we need to take that into account, which means we bought things that weren't in the budget. We paid for things that were not in the budget. It sounds minor, but the first thing on the city manager's capital improvement was $100,000 for median poles and banners. And that struck me as I just listened to our service facility tell us how we don't have enough people to do the things that need to get done. We don't need more banners. We don't need to create more jobs for people to do, and when we don't have the people to do them, or they don't have time to do the priority stuff that is really in their job description. So I'm not supporting this budget. I think we could have gotten together and reduced capital and then gone back in after we see the actuals and pick and choose the things we think were important to us and gone from there. We certainly supplemented enough last year. That's not something we're not committed, I mean, we haven't done before, so. Otherwise, you guys said everything else, so thank you.
Any other comments?
Go ahead.
I'll just say, and to wrap up a couple things. One, as far as the capital improvements projects, I think the landscape of capital improvements projects have changed, and that is that staff can no longer, you look at police cars, you look at fire trucks, you look at ambulances. This is not something that we can just decide as we go that the money is or isn't there, and go ahead and let's order something, because as we've seen with the supply and demand issue and everything else we've got going on, is that we have to place orders this year for something that we may not receive for 2 years. So some of these items are not things, we don't have the luxury of being able to forego purchasing them, because when we get around to purchasing them, it's just going to kick that further down the road, and we're not going to have them when equipment starts to fail. So I think, but we have the option, even though we're passing the budget, and even, or potentially passing the budget, and appropriating the funds, almost all of the capital items come to us for approval before they're ever executed or purchased. So we can appropriate the funds now, and if the revenues aren't there, as these items come to us for consideration, if there's a concern of council that the revenues aren't there, we can forego those projects or delay them. So this appropriation ordinance is strictly appropriating the funds, but the way our purchasing ordinance is right now, we're seeing everything that's coming in more than $50,000, which, to be honest, as most of our capital items exceed $50,000. So we will have another bite at the apple, if you will, if we can reevaluate this as we go along, because if revenues tank and we don't continue to collect the revenues that we are projecting or exceeding that as we historically have, then we have that flexibility to take that action. And that's part of the ongoing evaluation with Ms. Slider giving us monthly updates on finances. I think it's something that we've always been very cognizant of, that we see where our revenues are coming in. I mean, even just looking at the September financial report that was presented tonight, I mean, overall revenues for all of the general fund are already 10% over budget, and that includes income tax. Our expenditures are 5% under budget, so staff is not even spending what we've allocated for the year, and we've got 21.5 million unencumbered general fund balance. So the money is there. I don't think, to the mayor's point about a modified version 3, as I discussed in workshop number 4, I do not feel that there is a compelling argument that has been made that puts council in a position of cutting services to our residents when we have a fund balance of $21.5 million. That makes no sense to me. I don't understand how we tell residents that we are cutting services when we have that fund
We cut
balance.
any services.
Nobody
There were,
proposed that.
version 3 was service, unfilled positions, that's service cuts. By not filling positions in this city, that is a cut of services to residents. We discussed that at workshop number 4. So that is a service cut. When you don't hire a community risk reduction coordinator in the fire department, when you don't hire a dispatcher back, when you don't hire 2 public works technicians, that is going to affect the service delivery level to our residents. And when we have $21.5 million and growing in the bank, I don't see how that's a possibility that I can tell residents that that's what we need to do. So that's all I have.
Well, first, thank you, Councilman Lewis, for beautifully articulating the process and some of the things that we went through and that we saw. And this is the first time in a number of years that I can recall that we've looked at the budget in this detail, that detailed, and scrutinized that much. And I think I even learned a little bit more each year, and even more so this year. Although I was absent on several. Thank you for bringing me up to speed, Mr. City Manager. And that was intense as well. But I also feel that as we've seen over the years, the projected income has risen and maintained. And I understand that there is some consonance about, if that falls out, if that falls down, we don't hit those projections as we may have seen now. We're staying with a 6.5. We heard tonight, it was up around 9.75 is what we're getting. Well, I think that's where we're looking at being conservative, is say, okay, well, is that anomaly? Is that maybe not happen every year? So I think that was the approach that we took to say, hey, look, at least back it down to 6.5 each year as far as that income coming in, and then even maybe back it off the next 3 years in that projection to 5, because again, we don't have that crystal ball that we can really look out much past those 3 years. And ever since 2008, when we had a recession, I've not really seen anything, even at that time, it was 2%. We cut everything until we saw the numbers come in and say until we can support those capital improvements. And ever since then, and ever since COVID, both of those timeframes have really hurt us in the capital improvement side because we've just put Band-Aids on things. So as we have seen the projection and then we see the actuals, we are staying basically neutral. We still have healthy fund balances. The Tri-Cities, that will come out of other funds, the sewer, water, all those other funds that have money supporting itself. So some of that debt service will be paid through those as well. But going forward, I see, if inflation goes higher, okay, that can affect things. If we go into a recession, then that can certainly affect things like it did in 08 all the way to 10. And we felt that. And we adjusted accordingly. And we never had to cut services. So I appreciate us being conservative to the point that we're cautious. But I'm not sure that we are conservative to the point where we stay stagnant. And that's where I feel that, as Councilman Lewis said, this is 24 budget. We have that opportunity. If we see some anomaly along the way, this is a living document. We can go and work with it. As Councilman Follick said, if there's something that comes to us and we see the numbers aren't matching, we get those every month, every quarter, then we have that time to adjust that. This is not doom and gloom as well as I see it. Yes, in the future, there could be a lot of debt service. There's no doubt that that's coming down the road. How we're going to pay for that is certainly what we probably need to look at going down the road, not just this year, but further years out. And maybe that's better forecasting, looking back, looking forward. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I think that's why I looked at version 2 was kind of a blend or hybrid of the first session and the third session, or version, I should say. And after hearing everybody talk, I see where we're coming from, or see where council's coming from, and I really appreciate everybody's hard work at this, and especially in my absence, what you went through to look at this. And all of staff, and the time that you spent working on it to get it to this point, all the numbers apparently that were asked for to help make this a better document. So that's kind of where I'm at. I appreciate it.
Okay, my turn. I guess I'd like to say that not only are we 9% above the previous year as far as our income, but we are 16% above our budgeted amounts for the previous year at the moment. And I'd like to respectfully contradict one of Mr. Lewis's statements in as much as I do have 1,000 clients in the public sector, 300 at least businesses, and I do see the increase in profits, and a lot of our increase, although you can't compare the city increases to the private sector, but a lot of our revenue comes from payroll tax dollars, and employees are getting raises of anywhere from 3.5% to 5% to 6% a year. My clients are all increasing their income at those percentages, 5% to 6% a year, and have been for the past few years. So this isn't an anomaly. It's something that happens, and that's just my experience as a CPA and having that information. Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the roll.
I'm sorry, I kind of lost where we were. Councilmember Blakesley.
Yes.
Councilmember Follick.
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst.
No.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yes.
Councilmember Woods.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yes.
And Mayor Herbst.
No, and the motion passes 5-2. We'll move on to ordinances in their second reading, the first one being ordinance 23-24.
An ordinance creating a city fire insurance fund, providing a policy relating to such fund, and codifying same as section 234.10 of the Vandalia Codified Ordinances.
And since this is an ordinance in its second reading, I'd like to open a public hearing, so if anyone would like to comment on this ordinance, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and your comment. Being none, I'll close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 23-24 in second reading.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Blakesley and a second by Vice Mayor Lewis to approve ordinance 23-24 in its second reading. Are there any comments?
As I said before, this is one more tool in the toolbox going forward that will help us, and I've seen where this has worked extensively in other cities, and I appreciate us having this on the books.
All right, thank you. Call the roll.
Councilmember Follak.
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst.
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers.
Yes.
Councilmember Woods.
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis.
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. Next, we have an emergency ordinance, that being ordinance 23-25.
An ordinance approving individual assessment amounts and directing the finance director or her designee to certify the amounts to the county auditor for collection and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
This emergency ordinance assesses properties for delinquent accounts related to stormwater fees, trash collection, delinquent sewer and water, weed cutting, and property maintenance.
Since this is an emergency ordinance, I'll open a public hearing. If anyone would like to comment on this, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and your comment. Being none, I'll close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance 23-25 as an emergency.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Fairst and a second by Councilman Follak to approve ordinance 23-25 as an emergency. Are there any comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Fairst.
Yes.
Councilmember Ayers.
Yes.
Councilmember Woods.
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley.
Yes.
Councilmember Follak.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis.
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion passes 7-0. And we amended our agenda earlier tonight to include emergency ordinance 23-22. Mr. McDonald?
An ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $6 million for the purpose of paying the cost of improving the municipal public transportation system, including National Road, US 40, and Dog Leg Road, by constructing, reconstructing, extending, opening, widening, grading, draining, curbing, paving, and resurfacing the site preparation, installing stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water improvements, and acquiring any necessary interest in real property together with all incidental work and related appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Wendt?
Your Honor, the purpose of this ordinance is to provide for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $6 million for the purpose of paying the costs of improving the municipal public transportation system, including National Road, that's US 40, and Dogleg Road, constructing, reconstructing, extending, opening, widening, grading, draining, curbing, paving, and resurfacing in site preparation, installing stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water improvements, and acquiring necessary interests in real property, together with all incidental work and related appurtenances thereto, and declaring the emergency. Although the legislation states that the issuance is not to exceed $6 million, Director Cron has worked with Choice One engineers to reduce costs by reducing the amount of pavement and restoration work that will need to be conducted along US 40. As a result, the engineer's estimate is approximately $3.1 million, and our team believes that with contingencies, the city will not need to actually issue debt of more than $4 million for the project. Still, we propose having the ordinance passed as presented. Debt service for this project will likely be paid from water and wastewater utility revenues, infrastructure fees, and possibly in the future tax increment financing associated with future development. This project is not likely to result in direct general fund expenditures, and per Mr. Brossart, does not impact our general obligation debt scores, which relate to our overall bond rating. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And since this is an emergency ordinance, I'll open a public hearing. So if anyone would like to comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and any comment that you would have. Being none, I'll close the public hearing. Can I have a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance 23-22 as an emergency.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Ayers and a second by Councilman Follick to approve ordinance 23-22 as an emergency. Are there any comments?
I'd like an explanation why we're not removing it and putting it back on at 4. I thought we were removing 2322.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
We
thought we were removing
We
this.
removed it from the table. It was tabled at a previous reading. We removed it from the table and put it on tonight's agenda.
Why would we not remove it and restate it as 4 instead of 6?
The reasoning behind that is, what it is it's an amount not to exceed. And so what we'll be back for, what we have to have is a maximum amount. That was the round dollar figure that we got from our financial advisors and bond counsel. Then when we go through the actual bidding process and we get those bids back, the legislation that will be before City Council will be to award a contract based on the bid. We anticipate that bid will be around 3.1 million. This is similar to, I think in Phase 1, we had about $4 million in cost. I think we brought somewhere around 6 and said we anticipate it being less. This was the case also with the roof HVAC project, where once you go down the pipeline for bond issuance ordinances, you can't go back and change the number higher, but you can borrow less. And so I don't anticipate the 6 million. That number was put out there before we had the actual stamped engineer's estimate. And so that's why we believe
Why
it's
was that?
appropriate to pass in its current form.
Why was it put out there before then, and why is it an emergency?
I would defer to the law director and his relationship with bond counsel as to why bond ordinances are passed as emergencies.
I'm not sure why it was originally an emergency. It had to do with timing and things like that, but what we had was an ordinance that was an emergency ordinance that had a first reading, then it came up for a second reading as an emergency ordinance, and it was tabled. So when we bring it back, it is a ordinance in the second reading as an emergency.
Call the question, please.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Councilmember Ayers,
Yes.
Councilmember Woods,
Yes.
Councilmember Blakesley,
Yes.
Councilmember Follick,
Yes.
Councilmember Fairst,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Yes.
Mayor Herbst.
Yes, and the motion carries 7-0. That brings us to reports from boards and commissions. Council, we've received the Civil Service meeting minutes of September 7th, the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting minutes of August 9th, the Planning Commission meeting minutes of September 26th. Are there any comments? All right, we'll move on to the September bill listing 2023 in the amount of $2,690,715.18. The September expenses over $50,000, and the September purchase card detail in the amount of $29,493.37. And that brings us to council comments. We'll begin with Mr. McDonald.
Last time I was bragging on my daughter, I went home the next day, showed her the YouTube video, and got a big hug. So that was an all-around nice couple weeks.
Good for you. All right, Mr. Wendt.
I would like to say hello to the very diligent Boy Scouts in the back of the room. Thank you for attending. I love to hire Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts, Girl Scouts. The guy 2 rows in front of you is City Engineer Ben Borton. He's an Eagle Scout. and his Eagle Scout project related to his profession. So if you're looking for projects to do for the city, he might be the guy to talk to. Also, Joshua Berry in the Parks Department is an Eagle Scout, so hello and welcome. And other than that, I would just say happy birthday to Councilmember Woods.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Ayers.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Councilwoman Forrest.
Just thank you to Aaron Messenger in Parks and Recs. He does a lot of the work for Fall Festival, and he does a great job with a great attitude, so thank you. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pollak.
Just to echo the city manager's congratulations to Mr. Cron for the securing of the $1.3 million grant for the Johnson Station Bridge replacement. I think it was highlighted earlier too, but in the past 3 years, and this number just continues to grow, but in the past 3 years, staff has secured $15.5 million worth of debts and outside funding. And I mean, that's just tremendous for a city our size that we are leveraging that much outside funding to stretch our local tax dollars. So all staff should be commended for their work on those projects. I wanted to congratulate Recreation Coordinator Aaron Messenger for obtaining his Certified Parks Recreation Professional credential through the National Parks and Recreation Association. That's a big achievement within the Parks and Recreation field, and I think that brings us to 3 on staff, so I think it's congratulations to him on that. And then also, last but not least, about credentials is congratulations to our city manager, Dan Wendt. Mr. Wendt has been awarded his designation as an ICMA credentialed manager. And I think need to highlight that in Ohio, there's only 30 active city managers with that credential. And now Mr. Wendt's one of them. And here in Montgomery County, he is one of 3. So congratulations and job well done. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Blakesley.
Well, to echo all of what's been said before, however, I do want to also highlight about city staff and park and rec team with the Fall Festival. It was a marvelous outing. It's a shame that the weather took out half of it, but myself, my wife, and grandchildren loved it. And special thanks to Aaron Messenger. Now I know why he's a hidden gem, but he did a lot of work on that and outstanding work. And as well as appreciate any other special programming that Parks and Rec and Aaron does, outstanding. And I think it's a real plus for the city. And in that same realm, I was, speaking to my grandson, we took him over to the Helke Park. We had a chance to use that new playground. And so we were helping him around because he's only 2. But there were some other parents there with their children, and I asked them, what features do you like about this? And they said the challenging climbing part. So I think we hit a home run with that. So kudos to all the staff that helped arrange that. So that's great. And that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Woods.
I just want to thank the staff and council for all of the extraordinary amount of time that they spent on the budget this year and the due diligence and the hours, and it's very much appreciated by, I'm sure, both council and our residents.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Lewis.
I can't add to the aforementioned. Thank you.
All right. The only thing I had down that I was going to mention is the Fall Festival and what a success that was. And going through, I mean, I was surprised how many people came out, especially when the weather was a little threatening. And I received a couple of compliments regarding Aaron and the rest of staff and pulling that all together and making it run so seamlessly. So I really appreciate all of his hard work. Also, thanks for staff and council for all the work that everybody has put in on the budget. I think it's good that we can have these healthy discussions and debates. And I think that's what makes us a pretty good council. That said, the meeting is adjourned.